something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop.
Hello and welcome to Occupy TV, a project of the Occupy Eugene Media Group. We're here today. My name is Sam Rutledge, and I'm here with Marcus Farley and Jennifer Harper. We're going to talk to you about the People United event that's coming up and the Occupy statewide assembly for Oregon. That's on the same day. Let's jump right in and talk about the People United event. Now, can we get close on that for the viewers to see the date and time? It's February 25th at 11 o'clock, the Wayne Morse Free Speech Plaza. And Marcus, what is this People United event?
Well, there's a couple different ways to answer that. I think, first of all, in some sense, it's just an opportunity to set aside all the different politicized conversations and the debates over what it means to seek economic justice, all the different approaches, whether we work with reform or whether we want to, change everything radically. There's all kinds of different approaches, and everybody's fragmenting over these different approaches and tactics. This is an opportunity for everyone to set that down and gather under the common goal that we have of creating more economic justice in our culture. So setting aside the tactics and bringing together people from different demographics. Because what I hear all over town from different people is, yes, there's a problem, yes, something needs to be done, but they're not doing it right or they're not doing it right. Everyone has an idea of what the right approach is. This is a day to set aside the approaches, the divisiveness, and instead come together.
And that's a great goal, I think, and one that a lot of people in this community share. Why this event? Why this event this way?
Well, I think the community has, they've started to feel fragmented. October 15th, we had a huge march in Eugene. 2,000 plus people got on the streets and marched. Since then, the Occupy movement had about 5 physical sites. And now that we're not at Washington Jefferson Park, I think people are feeling fragmented, disfranchised, and however, they still really care about the movement and those issues and want to come together. So I think this event on February 25th is going to bring in all these people, bring them back, and bring them together and somehow figure out how we can move forward in perhaps a more productive way.
And there were thousands of people on the street on February 25th, or on October 15th. I mean, it was a huge, huge day.
Yeah, and Occupy has actions all the time, and this particular event was inspired by a simple photograph. A photographer on the Occupy Eugene Media Group, Gregory Walker, took a photograph of this young man sitting in a field of grass, and he was sitting with a simple sign that said, "My name is Billy." And so that simple yet very symbolic photograph kind of inspired this event. We're not just, we are the 99%, but we're not faceless. We are people. And so we're hoping that everyone will come out and show, they are people, there are issues that they care about. Let's get excited to create change. Let's come together.
And it's a brilliant idea that personhood is for people, which I think is one of the taglines for this event. Tell me a little bit more about that and about what the focus, I guess, politically, if there is a political focus, of the march is.
Well, in some ways, it's kind of silly that we have to all gather together and march down the street to kind of illustrate what a person is. But it seems like that's where we are right now. We have to walk down the street to show everybody, I'm a person. This is what a person looks like. We don't look like corporations. But a big part of this also, it's like over the years, especially with 2010 and Citizens United, we lost our voice. As individuals, we lost a great deal of our voice, and now we see what Mitt Romney's Bain Capital, for example, had, and the 30 biggest corporations in the country, they spent far more money on lobbying efforts than they do on taxes. And so they're circumventing the system that was set up to support democracy and instead finding a new way to kind of strengthen their own voices while diminishing ours. So we, in order to bring our voices, we don't have lobbyists, we don't have super PACs ourselves. What we do have is each other. And so this is an opportunity to pull ourselves together and kind of celebrate interdependence, that when we do come together for a shared goal, we do have power within this system. And it really is the only way that we have it. And I personally feel like a big thing that's been a struggle for me for years that seems to culminate with this is we've been fed in this culture this idea of independence, which really, when you look at it, is counterdependent. We've been fed this idea that we're supposed to do it on our own. If we're lost, we don't ask for directions. You know, we don't. I think about even back as a kid. If I came home from school, I walked home 4 blocks. If my door was locked and I couldn't get in, I didn't panic. I didn't have to worry about, you know, some neglect case going to CSD. I could go to my neighbor's house and I knew their names, I knew their kids' names, I knew their pets' names, and I could go and I'd be sitting at their table having a snack, hanging out. And I know that wasn't the story for everybody, but I knew my neighbors. And that isn't the case for most people nowadays. We're all very much in our own tracks. So we've become counterdependent. This is a chance to kind of regain a little bit of power by coming together and making a statement collectively that we can't possibly make individually.
And I've never heard of anybody going to get a snack after school at a corporation's house.
That's a good point.
You were saying earlier something about the legal fiction of corporate personhood. Tell me more about what you meant there.
Well, I mean, essentially, it's a term that's actually not even pejorative. It's a term that's actually used within the government, that it's a legal fiction that the government recognizes that corporations are people for the sake of all, especially with 2010 and Citizens United, it blew the lid off and said First Amendment rights completely apply to corporations the same way they would for any of us. Which means that basically they acknowledge that they're not people, but they acknowledge that they are it's a legal fiction that they're going to accept they are for the sake of this process.
And at the risk of asking an obvious question, what's wrong with that?
Well, corporations don't feel the suffering that individuals do. And, you know, so on February 25th, when people come out into the streets, there's going to be people from all walks of life. People who don't have enough money to pay rent, people who don't have enough food, people who have children who don't have health care. Corporations don't feel these burdens, and it's the people do. And so we just need to come together and show support for supporting the 99%. Corporations, you're not going to have CEOs out there marching.
And I think the other thing there, too, is that there are individuals behind that legal fiction that are raking in a whole lot of money and essentially cornering the market and continuing to tilt the playing field in their favor. And just considering, like, even when Romney did come out at the request of a lot of people and disclosed his tax records, and when it was discovered that he paid a 13% tax rate, which is probably about half of what we paid, he said right into the cameras, but that's what's expected. You know, I'm not going to pay more than what's expected. But he didn't mention the millions of dollars he spent through all these different corporations that he's involved with to actually keep tax reform laws from getting passed. So he worked really hard and spent a lot of money to make sure that his rate stayed low, and then just shrugs his shoulders and says, well, that's all that's expected of me. So he and others are actually behind this legal fiction and creating a legacy of wealth at the expense of our growing population.
And when money is speech and corporations are people, power comes into play. Mm-hmm. And power is, I think, one of the big reasons behind the march that's going to be scheduled in, I say march, more than a march. It's going to. Mm-hmm. But tell me what some of the goals of the People United event are.
Well, I mean, there's a couple different things. I mean, for one, just inspiring collaboration in general. Right now, one of the most promising things about Occupy Wall Street, and I still remember myself tuning in through the internet and seeing when people were first coming into Zuccotti Park, the inspiration was, it almost feels like it's our last hope in some sense, is each other. we don't have a whole lot of a legal recourse. Our votes don't mean a whole lot anymore. And unless we're going to become wealthy all of a sudden, we don't have much of a hope aside from pulling together. So watching that happen and seeing how quickly it lit a fire and spread all the way around the globe, I mean, I personally have been waiting my whole life to see something like that happen, and had kind of, like a lot of people, I think, become a little bit jaded about the possibility of something like this ever occurring. Mm-hmm. Since then, some of that initial hope has tarnished a little bit, and it seems like people have fragmented and splintered a little bit in doing what we do so well, which is arguing. We debate. We don't know necessarily how to dialogue and connect. And so this march is a chance to reform that, and I guess one of the big goals is to kind of get ourselves back on track as a people and recognize that, yes, this group might be a little bit different in tact than this group, but we can work together, and that strengthens both.
I think building community is so incredibly important. I remember at Washington Jefferson Park, when I first got involved with the Occupy movement, going down there for meetings, and I was an individual participating, but it took time to build community. And then once that sense of community was established, then I felt like as a group, we were really able to accomplish something. And I think this event, the People United event, is going to bring all of the Eugene Springfield and more together and help build community, a stronger bond, because like Marcus mentioned, people care about these issues we're trying to address, but they haven't really built up that sense of community. So I think that's a great step in seeing people, recognizing faces, building up trust, and learning how to work together. The big government and corporations have done a good job in hindering that building of community.
And the concept of community, I think, connects very closely with the idea of corporate personhood. Because as much as corporations talk about being corporate citizens or members of a community, they really aren't, are they? No. They don't participate in events like these. You can't see them as members of a community. Did that play into the thinking behind this event at all, or the idea that a human community is made only of humans?
Well, in a sense, it's interesting because there are kind of two threads that are braiding together in this event. And one is the corporate personhood issue and the idea that personhood is for people. And the other is putting that face on this 99%. And as one person from Occupy Eugene had put it, I forget exactly how he said it, but I am not a credit rating, I am not a ballot statistic, I am not a demographic, I am a human being those things. And so getting back to that base, the humanity of it, and again, it just comes back to, it's kind of silly that we have to go to the degree of putting all this energy out there just to show what a person is. Another piece is this is the democracy of now. I mean, this is what democracy has become at this point in our lives. We can keep on checking boxes on ballots, but it doesn't mean as much as it used to, especially if the candidates that get there have pretty much been bought along the way by these people that are corporations.
What is it about the vote that it's no longer as valuable as it once was? I'm curious about that, because we do still have an electoral process. We do still have ballots. I mean, we have the opportunity to participate in that, but I think it's pretty widely understood that that's no longer as powerful a tool as it was at the founding of the country. What's changed?
Wow.
I think money and politics is the big part of it, and corporate personhood is was a huge leap. I mean, basically just blew off any regulations that used to be put in place to keep that from getting out of hand. Just look at Obama's cabinet and all the ties to Goldman Sachs and Monsanto and everything else. Almost everybody that is currently helping to steer our country has benefited in the millions from all these large corporations. That's a problem.
Well, and if you look at the hierarchy of voting power, you have the individual person who gets to vote. It's almost like a fake sense of democracy. Sure, they get a check, a ballot box, but when you have corporations and money getting entangled into politics, it's really all about who gets the most funding. Whoever has the most money wins.
And it's sad that it's come to that, I think.
It's very sad.
It's sad that it's come to that. But we're doing something about it. And what we're doing is a march, the People United, on February 25th. It's more than a march. What do you mean? What's meant by more than a march? We've said that a couple of times, but what are we looking at here?
Well, I think a big part of it is as we've started working on this, we're finding that there are so many different people that are interested in this and that are also interested in having this be a little bit more of a celebration, because we are living in an incredible community. And we saw that really clearly several different times, but especially on October 15th. That was a moving experience to get out and march with that many people. I personally was shocked to see all those people out there, familiar faces, people I'd never met before. But Eugene, Springfield area, this is an incredibly unique place. And we want this to be a celebration of who we are as a people. We are people individually, but who we are as a people collectively. So we are looking at everything from marching bands to there's some martial art groups that want to come out and do some things. There's music. There's all kinds of different things, and it's growing as we speak. People are piling into this. It's becoming almost more of a parade than a march.
And that's been my experience, is just listening to some of the ideas that come out, is everybody who hears this idea seems to have something to offer or have another idea that they want to bring in. Mm-hmm. And it feels like from the organizers, from yourself and other organizers, there's been a real outpouring of or an attitude of yes and, that yes, let's do that. And what else can we add to this to make it more representative of our community?
Yeah, there will be a huge rally right before we march, or more than march. And I know Occupy Eugene will have a table out there with literature. There are a lot of organizations and affinity groups that have formed to help work towards issues such as corporate personhood and politics out of money out of politics. So, if people want to learn more about how they could really get involved and help, I'd suggest, people come early to the rally and maybe take a look around at some of the tabling. I know there's an organization, a group of concerned citizens getting together today called Magic, and they're hoping to organize some strategies around eliminating corporate personhood. I think you might know a little bit about that.
Yeah, and actually that's myself and Mary, who wasn't able to be here this morning, Mary Broadhurst, have been working on bringing together this meeting of minds, and unfortunately it'll already be done by the time this program airs, so I can't use this as an opportunity to bring people out, but we're organizing around a few principles, and the impetus, I think, to bring this group together, the Magic group, is very similar to the impetus behind the People United event that's coming up, that we want to put our energy into developing these mass actions that are similar to the October 15th march, that bring out a wide section of the community, a wide cross-section, a lot of different sorts of folks. So, MAGIC stands for the Mass Action Affinity Group for Idea Coordination. One of the other principles we're organizing around is that we should be having coordinated campaigns around specific ideas. So this first campaign that this event will hopefully be kicking off is a campaign about corporate personhood. And there'll be other events to follow up on this one after and ongoing. But after the corporate personhood campaign, once we've found a victory there, and whatever form that victory takes, whether it's an Oregon legislative decision or a city decision or something entirely different, a nationwide constitutional amendment making personhood for people only, once we've gotten through that, we've got ideas for other campaigns moving forward. But I don't want to say too much about the Magic group because we haven't met yet. And really, the structure of that group and what it is in relationship to Occupy Eugene and to other community organizations is going to be decided by the group of people who shows up to be a part of this group. But we've had a lot of interest.
That's great. You know, Eugene is a hotbed for social activism, and I think it's wonderful that people are getting motivated and coming together and meeting. I think since the huge march on October 15th, I have seen so many groups come together. Magic's one of them. There's probably a couple hundred not-for-profit social activist groups in Eugene. I know within Occupy Eugene itself, you know, there's committees and affinity groups forming all the time. It's really a wonderful time in history right now. People are rising up, people are motivated, people want change, and they're coming together. It's very exciting.
And I like both, when you said yes and earlier, I think that that's really an exciting part to me, is getting away from the either or mentality. Because, you know, when we're divided, when we're fragmented as a people, we're good consumers, but we don't have a whole lot of power in the political system. So when we come together, maybe we're not as effective as consumers. You know, I think about this all the time, having a child and raising a child, how advertising on TV and on the radio is just constantly selling us on the idea that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not popular enough, and we just need to go buy this, buy this, buy this. But it's that counter-dependent thing again. So getting into this yes and with Magic and People United is such a great opportunity, not only to rally together all these people within the community that are already active, but also working with faith communities and with a lot of people who may not normally get involved with such a movement, and really appealing to them to come on out and celebrate what it means to be a community.
And that's one of the key points on this Magic group, is that what we would like to be doing is bringing together a broad coalition of different community groups, including Occupy Eugene, but including a lot of other groups as well. And we'd like to get unions involved and the faith-based community involved, and anybody who is interested in making social change on a massive scale involved in making that happen.
Well, I know when I went went to the Empowering the 99%, another group that has formed through all this, and went to their first public gathering and was amazed at the turnout. And what I was even more amazed with is the common thread that ran through that group when people got up from their small group discussions and spoke about what mattered. Foreclosures was a big one. But the biggest by far was corporate personhood. Mm-hmm. Across the board, across all the different demographics, that's what people were focused on. So I think that this is an issue because of, in a sense, how ridiculous it is, that people can rally behind. And it gives us a great doorway to bring together some of those folks.
And it was the other thing that happened at that 99% meeting that was pretty amazing to me is the degree to which people are really committed to a massive social change. Not just little reforms, but at one point, this group of 400 people, mostly middle-aged, mostly probably middle class, applauded at the concept of a revolution, which was unheard of to me. It was unthinkable that that would happen, but it was very surprising and uplifting as a moment.
One thing we have to recognize is that everybody has their own comfort level in creating social change. You know, whether or not that's camping out in a tree or in a public space or writing a letter from home to a politician. You know, everyone has their own comfort level, and everyone is trying to find what they can do. And I think, I think that February 25th will maybe help some people find where they can plug in.
And on February 25th, there's another great opportunity to plug into this huge social activism that's upwelling, that after the More Than a March, a lot of us are going to be headed down to Occupy 5 for the statewide assembly. Yes. Jennifer, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so February 25th is a really big day. Everyone can just go ahead and pencil in the whole day.
They just marker it in, get a Sharpie, and just block out the whole day on your calendar.
Yeah, so we'll start the day off with a rally at 11 at Free Speech Plaza. And then after the rally and the More Than a March, everyone's welcome to head down to Occupy 5, which is Occupy Eugene's headquarters, if you will, at 1274 West 7th. And Occupy Eugene will be holding an Occupy Oregon statewide assembly. And that is from 3 o'clock. It starts at 3 till 6. It's a 3-hour assembly, and basically people from all over Oregon, from all the Occupies all over Oregon, will be coming together in Eugene. We'll be hosting this assembly. So we're hoping to start to create statewide dialogue regarding some of these very important issues.
So how does this compare to a General Assembly? I mean, what's the difference? What's the similarity? I think a lot of folks who are watching today have probably been to one or more of our General Assemblies in Eugene. Is this just like a big General Assembly for the whole state?
It's similar, but it is also at the same time very different. So most people are probably familiar with the term General Assembly. General Assembly is where people come together to communicate, have discussion, and most importantly, create agreements, right? And so most of the Occupies, perhaps all, make decisions with using the consensus process or some version of it. So General Assemblies would, that's where you'll have agreements being made. Then you have regular assemblies, sometimes called open assemblies. Those are places in which agreements are not made, no decisions will be made, but there'll be lots of discussion, organization, collaboration, a sharing of ideas. So we will have people from all the Occupies in Oregon come together in Eugene, and we will start the conversation of how to organize as a state.
And do we have any idea how many Occupies there are in Oregon, or how many people will be showing up? What are some of the communities that we expect to see represented at this statewide assembly?
Well, I don't have an exact number, but it's I'm remembering 56
That's a lot.
in my memory.
Is that a lot? That's a lot.
I heard that there's more Occupy sites in Oregon than there are Les Schwab dealerships. I thought that was a good way of looking at it. So
We should give out free beef.
there you go. Tofu.
Tofu. I think, anyway.
Yeah, so, we expect people from all over Oregon. There's Occupy Portland, of course, Occupy Salem, which actually did host a statewide GA a few weekends ago, and that was actually motivation for us to create the statewide assembly, because going to Salem and being a part of that meeting where people from many, many different towns in Oregon came together, it was really inspiring and sparked the idea to really have a very focused and organized method of assembling and creating some more statewide movement. So we'll have Portland there, we'll have Salem there, we'll have people there from even the smallest Occupies of 8. So there's a Occupy in Corvallis, there's one in Cottage Grove, there's one in Roseburg, Elkton, Newport.
Elkton. I mean, it's such a small community.
Well, people want to do something. And regardless of where you live, if you are an Occupy of 5, that's more than none.
I've been really interested with the statewide assembly about how that, Oregon is a fairly large state geographically, but not very populous, and there's a lot of differences in the geography and in the communities. There's big communities like Portland and middle-sized communities like Salem and Eugene, and a lot of very small communities, Elkton, Roseburg. Well, Roseburg's bigger, but how is this statewide assembly going to help to maybe bridge some of those differences, and how can the larger areas help the smaller areas, and vice versa maybe? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, it's really exciting, because people in Eugene have been traveling to other Occupies, as people are doing all over the nation. And when they come back, they share their observances and ideas. And I think that while there's a physical site, Occupies are really focused on maintaining that physical site. And once that physical site is no longer there, people have more time to actually find out, well, what are other Occupies doing? Mm-hmm. And so when we come together on the 25th, we're going to find out, what is everybody doing? What's working for you? What's not working for you? How can we be more efficient? And so Eugene is a pretty organized Occupy, mm-hmm. as is Portland, of course. But we're very experienced activists. And so in some of the smaller Occupies, they may not have as much people power to help reach some of their goals. So I think coming together and sharing our strategies is going to be really helpful. So even the smallest and less experienced Occupies can take home some of these other strategies and just kind of help them do a better job in their community.
And I also think that it goes both ways in the sense that, like, there are a lot of us that have some really interesting ideas of what actions we could take. But when we come forward with those ideas and put them out into conversation with another group of like-minded or similar focused people, the ideas kind of take on a life of their own. And the People United is a perfect example of an idea that sparked out of a conversation and has grown until it's become its own thing. It's more than a march. When we get into these conversations and develop these relationships with people from other Occupy sites in smaller towns, it's those connections, that actual human relationship that feeds the interdependence and kind of builds both builds them up, but also builds us up. So the exchange of ideas and everything, it makes a big difference when you actually know the people that are involved in these different processes.
And it comes right back down to the question of community, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
That we can build community between these areas and mm-hmm. share resources as well. Mm-hmm. What are some of the resources I'm trying to think that we could that we would be sharing between communities?
Well, for one, I think how each Occupy, what their process is, and just watching and learning how other Occupies function. Being at the Salem GA, we had the Portland facilitation team come down and help facilitate the meeting, and just learning what skills they had and how they did that was a huge influence on me personally. And then Occupy Eugene shared their knowledge and strategies regarding media, and it is that building of community in other Occupies that I think is so important. One person can have a great idea, and they may live far away, but when you come together, you share that idea, and then 25 people have that idea. So just that's one thing that comes to my mind. How do you do things? Mm-hmm. What's working for you? What's not working for you? Let's share our ideas. Let's come together. And one hope that I have is that we not only start to organize as a state, but then go the next step and start organizing as a region, the Pacific Northwest region. Mm-hmm. And then wouldn't it be wonderful if we can hold a national assembly? Mm-hmm. And then why stop there?
The world, the universe.
Well, and it's also just, I think another resource is just us. Again, back to the people. It's if someone's going to plan an action of some sort in Elkton where they have, I don't know how many active members, but let's say it's one of the groups that has 8 to 12 members. I don't know if that's true of Elkton. Then it's going to be tough for them, not impossible, but tougher for them to really pull together an action that's going to punctuate and make a statement and, again, reclaim some of that power that we've lost in our voice as individuals. So having these interconnected Occupy sites means that we can kind of add to the numbers of these different, support each other's actions.
We can get a bus and we can bring people to Elkton for their action there, or to Drain, or to Notai, or any of the small communities. And the small communities communities in Oregon have been so hard hit by the economic changes of the last 30 years that it seems like they're a really natural place, actually, to do this kind of organizing. Have either of you been to any of the small timber communities like Elkton or other Occupies?
I work as part of my job out in Triangle Lake and Blatchley, and so I'm out there once a week in that community, and I've seen a lot of how many empty houses there are in and of itself. Just driving along some of the main roads out there, there's empty houses, and yet I'm working with families who are sleeping in tents in the backyard of a neighbor's house because the house 2 doors down used to be theirs, but they couldn't stay. So it's not just clear that this has impacted them. It's redefined what it means to live in that community for a lot of different people. So it's a sad thing to see.
And these were timber communities for the most part.
Absolutely.
And that's a whole other topic, I'm sure. Let's talk a little bit about the schedule for Occupy Eugene's General Assemblies, in case folks are interested in plugging in that way. When do we have those meetings?
You mean the schedule for the statewide assembly day?
No, I mean for the regular General Assembly schedule that we have every week, a couple of times a week, I think there are General Assemblies.
Yeah, currently Occupy Eugene is holding a General Assembly Tuesdays, 7 p.m., and Saturdays, 4 p.m., so one weekday evening GA and one weekend day GA, both at Occupy 5, 1274 West 7th. What I want to be sure to let people know that on the 25th, after the assembly, our Occupy chef, kitchen extraordinaire, Big John, is going to be hosting a dinner.
No way. I'm excited because his cooking is fantastic.
So I'm hoping, we're going to have a lot of guests. And I hope a lot of people from the community come out for the assembly, at least for the dinner. It's going to be from 6 to 8 is the dinner, and it's going to be a sit-down dinner. So we'll have chairs and tables and people serving plates of food. It is a fundraising opportunity for Occupy. There will be a donation sliding scale $0 to $5. Absolutely no one turned away for lack of funds, of course. Big John has been a wonderful person in helping to feed people who are hungry.
At one point I heard at the park blocks, at the Washington Jefferson Occupy, they were serving 800 plates a day of food to folks.
Yeah.
That's a powerful political statement as well as a real thing that helps in the community.
Well, I also think that it's important to note that after the meal is done, there's also going to be music, and it's going to continue on. We might just see the 25th turn into the 26th without noticing, but it is going to be a celebration of community in a big way, starting with a rally and culminating with some music at Occupy 5.
Do we have any idea who the performers are going to be?
I don't.
It's a secret?
It's a secret.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, it's going to be good because the musicians associated with this movement are of the highest quality, I know. What about some of the other things that are going on in Occupy? What about this visual initiative, the VIA group, Marcus, that you've been involved in? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, VIA actually just recently became a group and was born out of an idea back around 2007. There was a art installation display out at the University of Oregon on the campus that many people might remember with wire marker flags. One white flag representing every 6 Iraqi citizens that had died in the Iraq War. And in and of itself, it was an incredible display, but there was a small portion that were red flags. And when you walked closer and saw what they were, it really punctuated like those were the American casualties. And standing amidst that field and seeing it all laid out like that was an incredibly powerful kind of experiential way of seeing it. Well, we've taken that idea and started running with a way to use a similar approach to display wealth distribution in the U.S. And so our first action, stands for Visuals in Action. And it's a way, our tagline is putting things in perspective since 2012. So we're going to start with the wealth distribution display, and we're going to try to move it from park to park around Eugene and Springfield so that people can come and visit it and see clearly, without just looking at numbers on a page or a computer screen, where we stand in terms of how things are being distributed. And it's going to be quite shocking when we figure out the numbers for it.
Tell me what this is going to look like a little bit. Do you have can you describe it?
Well, right now, one way we're looking at it, and we haven't completely decided on this approach, there'll be 4 different colored flags. The first one will be the 0.01%, and it'll be the vast majority of the flags. That'll be their share out of the pot of money. The next colored flag, which there'll be several of as well, will be the remaining 1%. Then there'll be a few that'll represent the 1 to 10%. And then the remaining 90% will have one flag. So when people come up to it and see the sign, they can say, where am I? Where's my income for the last year? They're going to usually, based on our statistics for Eugene Springfield, find that they're the purple flag or whatever, and have to go through the entire field of flags to find that one flag that represents the share they get out of the wealth in this country. And so we're looking at all kinds of other displays that help to illustrate the number of empty homes in the United States compared to the number of homeless people.
Such a tragedy.
Showing the number of foreclosures in Lane County. We've talked about all kinds of different ideas for using visuals in this way. So it's an exciting project. A lot of people jumped on board right away. We just formed the affinity group last week, and we have more ideas than we know what to do with. So.
Excellent. Well,
A great way for artists to get involved.
And if somebody wanted to plug into that group, how would they get into contact? Is there a email address or
That's a good question. I would say probably, I guess I can give out my email address for that. Would probably be the easiest thing because we don't really have any other touch point right now. So that would be Farley, Farley, MFT, at gmail.com. So anyone could email me there. Or they could go to the Occupy Eugene Media site or the Facebook page for Occupy Eugene, and probably will be able to find me in that way too. So just at this point, we're still just formulating the group.
Excellent. Well, that's exciting things to watch out for. In other Occupy news yesterday, although not officially connected with Occupy, group was in the Kesey Square. Do you have anything to share about what happened down there?
Well, I saw a little bit of the live stream, and so it looks like Occupy Eugene is still occupying public spaces. They occupied Kesey Square yesterday, gave out free organic fruit and produce to people, did some sidewalk chalk art with some very intriguing messages.
You can probably still see some of it if you walk by the Kesey Square.
Yeah, there were a Scrabble game, a mad Scrabble game, and a fun chess game out there. Yeah, I think it's going to be a weekly thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
every week on Friday? They're going to be down there reclaiming that public space.
Yeah.
I happened by on my lunch break, and I tell you, it was really something else. It was there were bubbles. They were blowing bubbles, and they were fruit and also cookies they had. And it felt really, really nice and warm in a community building kind of exercise. The folks who walked by seemed to be really supportive, and even some of them stopped and chatted and looked at some art that was up on display.
One thing we try to do as a movement is to honor a diversity of tactics. And so some people may not feel comfortable participating in one event, but there are many others that might be more accommodating for them. And that Kesey Square gathering every Friday at 1 is a wonderfully family-friendly event with bubbles.
And I understood that it wasn't an official Occupy event, that it was another group that was aligned but not affiliated doing that, which I think is fantastic, because a diversity of voices means a diversity of groups, and everybody is all working ultimately toward, I think, the same goal.
It's more of that yes and.
More of that yes and.
And it's kind of like, and that's one of the things that I always keep in mind with the People United more than a march is, this isn't just a pulling people together to make a difference. This is a celebration of who we already are and what we already do. Because, you know, I'm not originally from here, but I've been here 20 years, and a lot of what's kept me here and has me raising my family here is the fact that there's such a diversity of approaches and ideas and all these people that are constantly coming up with new ways of doing this work. And there's many people in this community that have been working on these issues long before Occupy was even thought of. And so People United gets to be a chance to celebrate all of that.
Yes, just the coming together.
Yeah.
Community coming together,
Community
whatever
coming together.
form.
There's some other things that are going on, and I want to get back to that People United because I have a few more questions to ask about it. But let's talk a little bit before we do that about the Medical Street team that's going to be starting to do some street medicine. I know during the Occupy camp, one of the biggest, aside from the meals, biggest community services that we were able to provide was free medicine and medical care to folks on the street. So I hear that that's going to be starting up again. Is that? Do you have any information on that?
I don't have a ton of information on it, but I do know that the Occupy Medical Group is going to be reoccupying the park blocks where the first occupation site was on Sundays, starting this weekend, starting tomorrow. Although I don't know when this will air. I don't know if it will have already passed. But they're going to be reoccupying. I don't know the details about times and everything. But again, just gathering together, setting up a space, and being able to provide medical care for people that aren't able to access it in any other way.
So it will be held every Sunday. I believe it's 11 to 5.
11 to 5.
11 to 5.
And can anyone go there and see a doctor or nurse, get some medical care?
Anybody can go there. There's no charge whatsoever. If they're not at the park blocks, they'll be right in front of the courthouse. And there'll be a privacy tent, so people can get some attendance by a skilled professional. But, you know, that is something, when the physical site went away, there were hundreds of people who didn't know where they'd get their next meal from. There were hundreds of people who didn't know how they could get their ailment cared for. And so we've been trying to figure out, you know, how can we still help in that way, because we have lots of skilled people involved. And this group passionately cares about providing medical care for the community. So they're really excited to go out there and help. There's so many people who don't have health insurance. There's so many people who don't have $20 to go pay a copay to see a doctor or funds to get prescriptions, and just exist with hurt and ill bodies.
Yeah.
So.
And for the very poor, the Oregon Health Plan has been closed to new applicants since, has it been since 2003 that it's been closed? It's been a very long time. So even the government-funded health insurance program for the very poor isn't accessible to a lot of very needy folks.
Can't get it.
And people who are living with or coping with illness or chronic pain, it has such an impact on their mental health, on every aspect of their lives. And so, I mean, there's a lot of people who are just hanging on and trying to get by day after day. So things like this are wonderful in that they provide a little bit of dignity for people. You know, healthcare should be a human right.
Healthcare is a human right as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Well, this provides a little bit of that dignity when people are able to get a little bit, you know, more help in this way. It's going to improve so many different aspects of their lives. So it's a wonderful thing.
Well, let's come back around to the People United event, and if we can show the poster just one more time to get the information out about when and where it is. This is the People United. It's more than a march, and it's on February 25th. We'll meet at 11 a.m. at the Wayne Morse Free Speech Plaza. For those who don't know where that is, it's right in front of the County Courthouse and Public Services Building.
Right across from the Saturday Market blocks.
Right across from the Saturday Market blocks in the downtown Eugene area.
And let me just say something about that poster.
Yeah.
We have so many wonderful artists involved, and that particular poster was designed by Rob Sider, and he has just put together and designed so many wonderful pieces of art.
Rob has been a real powerhouse for this movement as far as his just relentless commitment to good design, and he's designed a lot of our posters and flyers and web content. So.
Yeah, and you know, the Occupy movement is a historical movement, and posters like these are being archived, And I think it's really exciting to know wonderful artists like this who volunteer their time and creativity.
And create pieces of history.
Yep.
Which is what I think we're all doing here. This People United March has the potential to really be history making. Tell me a little bit more. We talked a little about the narrative, but I don't think that we got as deeply into it as I would have liked to. What's the message? What's the story that we want to tell with this event?
Well, one of the things that's written on the poster, and that's it's not a it's a suggestion. We encourage people to bring simple handmade signs that state very clearly my name. For me, my sign will say, my name is Marcus and I am a person. I'm putting my name out there. I'm not anonymous in this. I'm saying I matter enough that I'm willing to come out here and march, or more than march, and also defining that I'm a person. If we can get folks to bring signs like that, we know other people are going to bring different kinds of signs, but really want to make a statement with gathering together people from all over the community, pointing that out. And the real purpose of it is to get at the common humanity, the thread that ties us all together. We all have our different politics, our different jobs, our different belief systems, but when it really comes down to it, the one thing that we do have in common is we all want fairness. We all want some justice in this process. We all want to know that what we're working for actually means something, that our vote's going to matter somehow. So this is an opportunity to get together and kind of make a step in that direction together.
And there's a difference that happens. There's something that happens when you learn somebody's name.
Yes.
They're not just a body. They're a human being with a name. And something happens when you find that out. Part of community building.
That was what struck most of us when we first saw the sign with the "My name is Billy." It was just such a simple, profound statement that we've become so detached from each other. We're so focused on the issues and concepts and all these abstractions. That sign that just said, "My name is Billy," and we still haven't been able to find Billy, the person in the photograph. So if Billy's watching, get in touch.
Billy, if you're watching,
contact us. Go to the Occupy Eugene website,
yeah,
Occupy Eugene Media, and we want to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if anybody knows Billy or how to get in touch with him, occupyeugenemedia.org or any of the Occupy websites. The faces of the 99%, putting a face to a name, I think, is a powerful part of this as well. Trying to phrase the question, what is that? Why is it important that we be there physically? Why gather?
Well, for anyone who has gathered on October 15th or for any other kind of thing, there's a power in that. There's a feeling of empowerment within each of us individually by participating, but it's also we empower each other. And if you think back to when Occupy started, there were a lot of things on the internet, the faces of the 99%, where people would hold the piece of paper telling their story, and it would always end with an "I am the 99%." You could read statistics about how many people in this country were suffering from illnesses and major medical issues that didn't have insurance, but one person holding a sign with their personal story, for most of us, is more impactful than all those numbers and statistics. So that's really the power, is we're all living out our stories. We all have our own narratives, and the experience of braiding those together into one powerful strand is undeniably powerful.
It's part of unity. We all have our story. Once we hear each other's stories, we find commonalities. And I think that helps build a cohesive community, knowing that we're not alone in our struggle.
And we humans are just such excellent pattern finders, aren't we? So if somebody wanted to get involved with this People United event in a bigger or in a more robust way than just showing up with a sign, not that people shouldn't, everybody should show up with a sign, but if someone wanted to get more involved, how would they plug in?
Mostly through the website would be an easy way to do it, through the occupyeugenemedia.org, or by coming down to the Occupy 5 site and coming to one of the General Assembly meetings. at any given General Assembly, you're going to have a handful of people who have been actively involved in People United present. So that's either in person at Occupy 5 or on the internet.
Also, if people go to the Occupy Eugene website, there's a calendar of events and meetings. I don't think the People United event or the Magic Group or the Statewide Assembly Working Group have set their next meeting dates. But if anybody goes to the website, there's a Google Calendar that will list them.
List those meeting dates and times and places.
Locations, yeah.
If somebody wanted to help spread the word for this event or get the word out, are there materials available? Or
Yes, they can go to the website and look up the Outreach Committee contact and contact them, and we can help give people posters to put up. There's a Occupy Eugene Facebook page with an event invite they can forward to all their friends.
And on their own Facebook walls, so that it spreads beyond the existing Occupy Eugene community, as well as tweeting and emailing and any other way to spread this message far and wide that we're having more than a march on February 25th.
Well, and also we can come out, members that are involved with helping to put this together can come out to different groups who are gathering to talk about it. We're doing that this coming week, going out and talking to a group from the Oregon Country Fair, and we have a chance to go out and speak to them about this march and ways that they might be able to get involved. So if there's a group that might be interested in participating, they can contact through the website, and we could talk about getting somebody out there with some posters and some handbills and talk a little bit about it.
Or just getting talking points to individuals. If somebody belongs to the Elks Lodge or a church or any other group or organization that they'd like to bring this information, we can probably provide flyers or handbills or anything that they can bring out there.
Absolutely.
Well, we're almost out of time for this episode. Do you all have any parting words? Anything you'd like to leave us with?
Make a sign.
Make a sign.
Pencil in, Sharpie in, February 25th. Bring the kids out to the parade.
It's going to be a safe event.
It is going to be a safe event, and it's going to be a fun event. I think we're going to have a lot of different people from all different walks of life, all different ages. It'll be a great chance to kind of see who is Eugene Springfield.
And it should feel like a circus or a carnival or something along those lines.
And in a day to put down all the politics and just celebrate what we have in common.
I'm so excited.
Come meet your neighbors. Come meet the people who shop in the same grocery store as you do. Come meet the people you walk by on the sidewalk. Come out. Meet your community. We're
all in this together, and I think it was it Ben Franklin at the founding during the Revolution who said we all have to hang together or we'll surely hang separately. Well, I don't know that we're in danger of hanging, but at the very least we all have to hang together or we're never going to fix these problems.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching this episode of Occupy TV, which is a project of the Occupy Eugene Media Group. We're so glad to have you, and please come back next week, same time, same channel, for another exciting episode of Occupy TV. Timer said 0. Just sitting here smiling.
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's